YouTube, what's going on? Attorney Tom here. Today's video, we're going to be talking about the $1,400 stimulus check. Who gets the stimulus check? How will the stimulus check be delivered? When will it be delivered? What happens if you didn't qualify for the stimulus check based on your 2019 tax returns, but in 2020 you had a lower income and therefore you should qualify for this stimulus check? How do you go about notifying the government that you are eligible? Before I begin, please make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to this channel if you want to be a part of this community. My goal is always to make content that is worthy of your time, and we're growing like crazy. We just passed 170,000 subscribers. Thank you so much. And for anybody who might be new here, my name is Attorney Tom. This channel always covers three main topics: money, time, and freedom, and the occasional random video. Specifically talking about money, stimulus money. The $1,400 stimulus, which just passed the Senate. Presumably it's going to the House, which all indication says it's going to pass. So I'm making this video on the assumption it is going to pass. And of course, this bill wouldn't be American without its fair share of twists and turns. When this bill was initially passed by the House and brought up to the Senate, it had a different income requirement for the stimulus checks, but the Senate made it more narrow. So now there's a new, less inclusive, more narrow list of Americans who are going to be receiving the stimulus check. Okay, starting out answering the most fundamental question: who qualifies for the $1,400 stimulus check? It's individuals with an adjusted gross income, AGI, up to $75,000. Heads of households with an AGI of $112,500. And finally, married couples with an AGI of $150,000. When will the payments be coming? President Biden said that the stimulus checks would be arriving within the month. And I anticipate the IRS will provide more details on this once the bill actually becomes law. Because again, it technically hasn't passed yet, but everybody's anticipating that it will. By this point, we can only assume that the people working at the IRS have enough experience to deliver the stimulus package effectively. In March of 2020, former President Donald Trump issued the first stimulus bill, which took about 2 weeks for the funds to reach a majority of the American citizens who qualified. Then his second relief package, which occurred at the end of 2020, took only a couple days for individuals to get funding once the bill was signed. So I think we can assume, or at least pray, that the stimulus funds will be deposited relatively quickly after the bill becomes law. Which leads to a great follow-up question: how will the payments arrive? If the IRS has your bank account information, the IRS will issue a direct deposit straight into your bank account. However, if they don't have that information, they will send you a paper check. Obviously, the paper check will take longer than the direct bank account, but the IRS has issued guidance on this, and please go check out their website if you want to learn more. Next question, and this is very important: what information is the IRS going to use when determining who is eligible for the stimulus payment? The answer is your tax returns. The IRS is going to look at your 2020 tax returns. However, if the 2020 tax return is not filed, they're going to look at your 2019 tax return. Think about that. If you didn't qualify for the stimulus in 2020 because your 2019 tax return was too high, but 2020 was a rough year for you and your income dropped below the stimulus threshold, you need to file a tax return ASAP. Because if you don't, the IRS will just use your 2019 tax return, and that could be a problem for you. So please look into filing your taxes ASAP if you're an individual who didn't qualify for the stimulus in 2020, but you think you qualify in 2021. Additionally, even people who did not file tax returns or people who have no income are eligible for the stimulus as well. The government is going to put out more resources on this particular instance in the coming days. So if that applies to you, make sure you stay on top of this and continually look up and refresh government resources. Okay, next question. What if my 2019 income was too high to qualify for the stimulus, but my 2020 income was not, and I'm watching this video after the stimulus funds have been distributed? Is it too late? And that answer is no. You can file your 2020 tax returns immediately, as soon as possible, in hopes of getting the stimulus payments as they're distributed. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that you miss the boat. Miss the boat. For example, if your income in 2019 was $85,000, but your income in 2020 was $60,000, you wouldn't qualify for the stimulus under your 2019 tax returns, but you would under the 2020 tax returns. And if you fail to make your 2020 tax returns on time, or should I say before the stimulus funds are released, you will get those funds. It will just take a longer time. I don't know how long, but at some later point this year, the IRS has not given details on this process yet. So don't panic, but I highly recommend, as your friend, not lawyer, not legal advice, just your friend from YouTube, to try to get your tax returns in as soon as possible, because you never know what crazy stuff can happen with the government. Okay, next scenario, let's flip it. Let's say your 2019 income qualifies you for the stimulus check, but your 2020 income doesn't, and you haven't filed your tax returns yet. What happens? Well, the analysis is the same as before. If you don't have a 2020 tax return on file, the IRS is going to look at your 2019 tax return, so presumably you could still get the stimulus check if you don't file your 2020 tax return on time, or I should say before the stimulus is distributed. And yeah, it's just something to think about. But I'm going to caution you on that. I do not know if when you file your 2020 tax return, if you are over the stimulus threshold, if that money has to go back to the government or is taxable or whatever. I tried looking up the answer to that question, but I couldn't find anything. So proceed with caution. So if you didn't think you were going to qualify for the stimulus check based on your 2020 earnings, but you failed to file the tax return on time and you magically got the $1,400 deposited into your account, it's just something to consider. That money might have to go back. Are there ways to reduce your adjusted gross income before you file your 2020 tax return so you can better your chances of qualifying for the stimulus? First of all, let me just say, I'm not an accountant. I just had a phone call with my accountant this morning. I'm not a tax lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is not financial advice. This is not accounting advice. But I highly recommend going talking to a certified financial planner, an accountant, a tax lawyer. You can do things like contributing to pre-tax retirement accounts such as IRAs, I think. I'd recommend just cursory reading a Wall Street Journal article by Laura Saunders about this very subject. What is the tax filing deadline? Well, it's April 15th for everywhere but Texas and Oklahoma. Because of the recent storms, Texas and Oklahoma have gotten an extension until June 15th. And as always, you can request an extension on your taxes for 6 months. But yeah, April 15th, that's the same as it's always been, except for last year. But April 15th, tax day, that's when your taxes are due. Moving on, does my 2021 income matter? Yes. Just as in the first two rounds of the stimulus, there are ways for individuals who do not get the full amount to claim the rest on their 2021 tax returns. Let me give you an example. A married couple makes $175,000 in 2019. They make $165,000 in 2020. And they make under $150,000 in 2021. Well, in 2020, they didn't qualify for the stimulus. However, because their income dropped below the stimulus amount in 2021, they can apply the $2,800, $1,400 for each of them, into their tax return for 2022, or the tax return filed in 2022 for the year of 2021. Think about that. That could be a really powerful incentive to reduce your adjusted gross income for 2021. Maybe it's time to contribute a little bit more to your retirement accounts. Let me give you an example, but this time I'm going to throw some kids in the mix. Let's say a family with 4 children. They make an adjusted gross income of $160,000 a year, and they make $160,000 a year in 2019 and 2020. Well, as of right now, they're not going to get any stimulus. But in 2021, they're able to reduce their adjusted gross income to below $150,000. They're able to reduce it by $10,000. Let's just say they put an extra $10,000 in retirement accounts. And by getting them below that $150,000 mark, they would receive $8,400 in credits. And that $8,400 would be used to reduce their tax bill next year, or subsequently increase their tax refund. So it's very important to think about these things. So what are some generic strategies for reducing your 2021 adjusted gross income? One is to increase contributions to your 401k and other workplace retirement accounts. This money is subtracted from your AGI. Or if you're a business owner, you could think about deferring income until 2022 or taking business deductions in 2021. What about babies? If you have a baby in 2021 and you qualify for the stimulus, well, then you can add an additional $1,400 to your tax credit next year. Final question, what can I do if I didn't get the full amount I was entitled to under the first two stimulus bills? Similar to the 2021 tax return, which you would file in 2022, you could do the same for the 2020 tax return filed this year in 2021. If you didn't receive the stimulus, but you think you qualified for the stimulus, there is a section on your tax return where you can ask for a credit for the stimulus money. And you can use that to either reduce the amount of taxes that you owe or subsequently increase the amount of refund you'll receive. Also, it's expected that the IRS will match the stimulus payments with the recovery rebate credits to make sure nobody is double dipping, so beware. And finally, the government has said that they may very well end up seizing tax refunds for back taxes and other debts. They didn't do this for last March's stimulus or December stimulus, but they said to look out for that. Okay, that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing if you thought this video was helpful. Our community is growing like crazy, and my goal is always to make videos that are worthy of your time. Thank you so much for watching. Please leave any comments down below on some content you want to see. I'll talk to you later. I gotta get to work.